Hello and welcome back to another solo episode of B2B Growth. My name is James Carberry. I'm one of the hosts of B2B Growth. And if you are just tuning in, this is your first solo episode. We've been doing these for the last couple of months. I dedicate the episodes on the weekends to just ways that I'm growing personally, how we're growing in our business. So it's not an interview. It's just me and articulating what's going on in our world right now and how I'm personally growing, how the business is growing. So today's episode will not be for everyone by any stretch of the imagination because I'm a man of faith and I'm a Christian. And when I was on my way back from my most recent B2B Growth dinner, I was reading through Proverbs, a book in the Bible, Proverbs 21. And as I was reading through it, I just thought, oh my gosh, this is insane how much of the Bible is correlated to the overarching themes that Gary Vee preaches all the time. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like the Bible's said this all along, and that's why I think I have such a resonance with Gary's message, because ultimately a lot of what he's saying is backed up by Scripture. So I know that there are some folks listening to this that are Christians. I know most people listening to this have definitely heard of Gary Vee. If this is not something that you're interested in hearing at all, you could just shut off this episode now. But if you're interested in hearing the 6 verses in Proverbs 21 that Gary is preaching without even knowing that he's preaching them, then stay tuned in, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first verse that I came across in Proverbs 21 is Proverbs 21:2. And it says, "Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart." And as soon as I read that, I thought about Gary, when Gary talks about your intent is everything. If he's okay with coming, Gary's okay with coming across the way that he comes across to some people. He can come across as very cocky, very arrogant, but he knows that his intent is ultimately good. And when I read that, I thought, man, the Lord weighs our heart. I just thought there was a really cool correlation there. The second verse, Proverbs 21:3. It says, "To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." And as I thought about that, I to do righteousness and justice is more acceptable than sacrifice. That part, to do, I think speaks to Gary's passion for taking action. Don't talk about it, actually do, take action. And so in verse 3, where it says, "To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice," just made me think that, man, when we actually take action and do things, it's much more pleasing to God than just talking about it, or maybe making sacrifices in the name of something that I don't know, it's just not as powerful as taking that action. This third one, Proverbs 21:6, it says, "The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death." And that made me think of when Gary talks about kind of build the biggest building in town by actually building it, not by tearing everyone else's building down. He also talks a lot about doing the right thing is always the right thing. So again, going back to that verse, the getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. I just think, man, that's exactly what Gary talks about all the time. Like when you're not doing the right thing and you're trying to build your own empire by tearing everyone else down, by lying, by deceit, by manipulation, it's never going to end up in your favor in the long game. Obviously here in the Bible, the context of like the long game, right? Like eternity, it's not going to work out for you. But Gary's talking about even here on earth, it's not the right way to do it. This fourth one, Proverbs 21, 21. It says, whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. Gary's been on a big kick lately about how kindness is everything. Kindness wins. And so to read this, whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor, just makes so much sense. This fifth verse that correlates to a lot of what Gary talks about, Proverbs 21:25. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. You don't have to think very long about this one. Obviously, Gary is a massive advocate for not being lazy, for working hard, putting in the work day after day after day. And I think this verse sums that up in a very real way. So the desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. If we're not willing to work, if we're not willing to do the hard things and put in the work necessary to achieve the goals that we want to achieve, we're not going to get there. It takes work. This last one, the sixth verse that I'm going to talk about, is Proverbs 21:26, and it says, all day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. Gary wrote an entire book about this, right? Jab, 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 right hook. You're always giving, give, always add value without the expectation of getting anything in return. So this verse saying, all day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. I think is a beautiful representation of what the same thing that Gary is talking about all the time. So this was really interesting to me as I was reading through Proverbs. I just thought, man, it was affirmation to me of why Gary's message resonates with me so strongly. Because ultimately, I've read a lot of what he's teaching long before I ever heard of GaryVee, right? Like I became a Christian when I was 15 years old, and have I try to read the Bible as often as I can. Some months I'm better at it than others. I definitely struggle with being consistent there. But as I've been trying to get more consistent with it, just realizing like, man, the reason, one of the reasons I think I resonate so much is because a lot of what Gary says came straight from the Bible, and the Bible obviously said it first. So I hope this episode was helpful. I hope for the Christians listening, I hope it was a little bit of affirmation, and even if you're not a Christian listening, hope it brought value to you. Obviously, I'm a huge proponent of the Bible and the wisdom that's in it, and also a huge proponent of what Gary's preaching, because I think there's just so much truth in it, as indicated by what we just talked about today. So hope this was helpful for you. Thanks a lot. Make sure to subscribe to the show, and if you want to leave us a review, that would be awesome. Reviews help us get discovered in iTunes more, and so any help we can get, we would greatly appreciate it. You can connect with me on social. I'm James Carberry on LinkedIn, at James Carberry on Twitter and Instagram. I've been going really hard on Instagram lately, really been having fun with stories, so make sure to follow me on Instagram if that's a platform that you engage with, and thank you so much for listening.